the Cold War, increasing tension concerning the arms race and space race between the US and Soviet Union led to the dire need for diplomacy. To prevent the nuclear arms race from reaching extraterrestrial areas, the Outer Space Treaty was developed. It was signed on January 27, 1967, requiring space to be exclusively used for peaceful purposes. This diplomatic creation spurred controversy, but eventually became the foundation of future space laws.
Prior to the creation of the Outer Space Treaty, a number of events and treaties took place. The Antarctic Treaty, the arms race, the space race, and the controversy between the Soviet Union and the US are all events that befall before the Outer Space Treaty. One major event, the Antarctic Treaty, implies the protection of Antarctica and ensures that it is used for peaceful purposes only. This treaty also promotes international and scientific cooperation in Antarctica. The Antarctic Treaty was a prime example for the creation of the Outer Space Treaty. Likewise, the nuclear arms race sparked conflict between the two nations. In 1949, the Soviet Union exploded an atomic bomb, commencing the start of the nuclear arms race. As years passed, both countries continued to test highly lethal and cataclysmic weapons and bombs. By the mid-1960s, both the Soviet Union and the US acquired a more than sufficient amount of nuclear power to completely obliterate the opposing nation. This raised and triggered the concern for the protection of outer space. As the creation of nuclear weapons and the use of harmful substances grew, concern about outer space was gradually starting to increase. In addition, the infamous space race was a kickstart from the main purpose of the Outer Space Treaty and similar treaties that follow. The space race was a Cold War rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States in space. During the space race, both sides tested their technological and aerospace capabilities, and they strived to achieve superior spaceflight intelligence. As a result, the Outer Space Treaty stands as the product of efforts by the Soviet Union and the US to agree on specific minimum standards and obligations to oversee and manage their competition in outer space.
The Outer Space Treaty was first signed by the UK, US, and USSR on January 27, 1967. Its creation was met with several difficulties, mainly concerning the opposition by the Soviet Union. Until the Limited Test Ban Treaty was signed, the Soviets were reluctant in declaring nuclear/military-free areas. For several years, the General Assembly continued negotiating and developing the treaty. They evaluated past treaties such as the Antarctic Treaty and revised, inaugurating the mindful progress the treaty was making. As a result of the years of thorough discussion and negotiation, the General Assembly adopted the officially titled Treaty on Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of Outer Space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies. The treaty consisted of 17 articles regarding the peaceful usage of outer space. These regulations prohibited self-serving pursuits such as nuclear launchings and other military-motivated activities. Quoting from the authentic documents of Resolution 2222, the Outer Space Treaty notes, "The progress achieved through the subsequent consultations among states members of the United Nations, reaffirming the importance of international cooperation in the field of activities in the peaceful exploration and use of outer space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies, and the importance of developing the rule of law in this new area of human endeavor." The Outer Space Treaty became active on October 10, 1967, marking a diplomatic approach to protecting the civil and altruistic use of outer space. It limits one's opportunistic aspirations and reserves the extraterrestrial for the attentive and earnest, creating an everlasting impact on our world.
The Outer Space Treaty became the foundation of space laws that were created in the future, such as the Rescue Agreement of 1968, which required countries to assist any astronauts if they have difficulties or issues. Additionally, the Outer Space Treaty contributed to the decline in tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. The Apollo-Soyuz test project was a joint mission between the Soviets and the US that occurred in 1975. 3 US astronauts were sent into space in an Apollo spacecraft, which then was docked in orbit with the Soyuz spacecraft with 2 Soviet cosmonauts. The handshake in space between the 2 commanders symbolized how the relationship between the Soviet Union and the United States was improving. The impact of the Outer Space Treaty did not stop in the past. It still plays a role in modern space exploration. The Outer Space Treaty prevents any conflict between countries from escalating into a war in space, similar to how it was able to prevent the nuclear arms race from reaching extraterrestrial areas during the Cold War. The Outer Space Treaty and all the space laws and treaties that came after it protect astronauts, spacecrafts, and even citizens who go to space. However, it does not necessarily mean that it has never been challenged. The Bogotá Declaration of 1976 challenged the treaty when 8 countries claimed that any stationary satellite above their land was in their possession. They declared their airspace was not classified as outer space and therefore was a natural resource. Ultimately, the United Nations officially concluded that the Bogotá Declaration violated the Outer Space Treaty, yet this spurred further discussion and debate regarding whether or not countries could own satellites above their land. Adding on, the Outer Space Treaty requires clarification or revision as it is unclear on multiple subjects. For instance, private companies have a much more prominent role in space exploration in the modern society, but the Outer Space Treaty contains loopholes and debatable words on the topic of private companies. This raised debates and discussions of how the Outer Space Treaty should be interpreted. However, even though there are a few faults, the Outer Space Treaty has been extremely significant and successful in keeping peace in space.
A day without satellites would be, you don't have an ATM machine, right? Because all that timing is done with the satellite. So you wouldn't be able to pump gas or, pay for anything. You wouldn't have GPS. So, if in your daily life, maybe you don't need it so much, but it will affect if you need to go somewhere you haven't been before. A lot of communications also occur using a satellite. So maybe you wouldn't be able to get up onto TikTok and send your video out, or get in touch with your parents or grandparents. So because we have that Outer Space Treaty, we have all of these benefits of space that we've been able to harness, and we've been able to do that peacefully.
As scientists further observe space history and modern society today, the Outer Space Treaty still stands with much impact and significance towards the safety of space and extraterrestrial bodies. Not only has this critical and influential treaty ensured security and surveillance for outer space, it has brought countless nations together, a noble act of diplomacy. Diplomacy was demonstrated throughout the whole process of ratifying and creating the Outer Space Treaty, and even afterwards as well. Recently, space exploration has been a huge investment for many private and government companies. However, one drawback of these new and upcoming opportunities is the debate and discussion regarding safety and authority amongst private companies. The Outer Space Treaty does not specify much detail concerning private companies. It focuses more on a global perspective and includes countries. This treaty is an international and worldwide legal network and balances rights and obligations between countries. On the contrary, the Outer Space Treaty exists as a mutual contract and includes shared understanding, privilege, and responsibilities regarding space exploration and any interaction in outer space. It took deep consideration and even debate to get where the world stands today. As the space industry further expands, many components such as the Outer Space Treaty must be present to aid the preservation of outer space and establish appropriate boundaries.